From Brussels to Brasilia, from San Francisco to Tokyo, the European Commission is shaping the digital future, not just at home, but across the globe. Join us as we navigate the digital diplomacy of tomorrow, because everything we do is part of something bigger.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Nathalie van der Staat, and I lead the communication and stakeholder activities at the European AI Office here in DigiConnect. I'm very pleased to host today's session organized with our colleagues from DigitalEU University and dedicated to the AI Office international engagement and activities. Today's session will last an hour and a half and will offer you a glimpse into how Europe promotes trustworthy AI worldwide. In just 18 months, the AI Office has become a center of expertise for trustworthy AI, connecting experts, policymakers, and innovators. In today's session, we will explore how the AI Office is contributing to EU leadership in AI through three dimensions. These three dimensions are cooperation at bilateral and multilateral level, our work on AI safety and security, and our policy on AI for the public good. To go through these three dimensions, I have the pleasure to receive three experts who will guide us a bit more this morning. So first, Juha Heikkilä, Advisor for International Aspects of AI. Welcome. Simon Muller, Workstream Lead at the AI Safety Unit. And Miguel Alvarez, Senior Official at the AI for the Public Good Unit. Welcome to all. Before we start into our conversation, I just want to share a few technical and practical information. You can actually ask your questions through the Slido application that we're using this morning, and you can see a QR code appearing on your screen. Also, this webinar is a technical, not a technical, but a practical webinar that will really explore our activities to date. So don't expect a full conversation and a full debate on our work, but I'm sure you will leave it with a better idea of our work. So before we dive into our conversation on bilateral and multilateral relations, I'd like to start by giving the floor to my three guests and give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and their work. So Juha, let me start with you. What is it to be an advisor for international aspects of AI, and how do you relate to the AI Office?
Thanks very much, Nathalie. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. And so I'm the advisor for the international aspects of artificial intelligence in the AI Office, so leading the European Union international engagement in the area of AI, because the AI Office basically has three pillars of activity. We have excellence, so research, innovation, and trust, secondly, which is of course most well known because of the AI Act, and then our international engagement and activity, which is part of the mandate of the AI Office. And we basically cooperate internationally because the impact of AI does not stop at our borders. Cooperation is necessary. So therefore we pursue what we sometimes refer to as AI diplomacy. We seek to basically lead global efforts by supporting innovation, setting appropriate guardrails, and also by developing the global governance on AI. We promote the responsible stewardship and good governance of AI internationally. And importantly, we want to ensure that any international agreements and statements, whatever results from international negotiations or events, that they align with our strategy, that they do not conflict with what we do here in the European Union. Because of the change in the global environment, of course, there is even more need now to have an assertive international engagement in this area, including also with our allies and partners. And this importance is only set to increase. We engage bilaterally and multilaterally, and more about that later, to support these goals and our approach. We want to pursue a policy internationally which presents us as a proactive and responsible, cooperative and reliable partner that leads by example. But we also want to, of course, protect our interests and security and values. So we work to build coalitions with those who share the same goals with us, and we build on our strategic assets, such as talent, research, the industrial strength we have in the European Union, and the large single market, to deploy these internationally and to also have this tech offer, which you may have heard about yesterday if you followed the session. So these alliances and partnerships are part of also of our tech offer, or to support our tech offer.
Many thanks, Juha. Now that you have set the scene, Simon, could you tell us a bit more about your work on safety?
Sure, happy to. Thanks, Natalie, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, maybe to start by taking a step back, that generally general purpose AI is an incredibly powerful technology, and we see the trajectory that it's becoming more useful. It has lots of potential for exciting applications, but with that also come new risks or exacerbation of existing risks. And part of our job at the AI office is to monitor these risks, particularly those that relate to public health, safety, public security, fundamental rights, and also just society as a whole. To make it a little more specific, some of the concrete risks here are, for example, models causing mental health problems, models being misused by bad actors for creation of biological weapons or to run large-scale cyber attacks. Also risks from so-called loss of control, where future AI models that could be smarter than humans sort of escape the oversight of the developers. We see some early signs here with models deceiving their users. Then also models causing harmful manipulation of humans, or models helping with discrimination or the biases that we see in some of these models. And to mitigate these risks, we have the AIinEurope. This broadly has two parts. One that's focused on AI systems, which is going to be enforced by the member states, and one on general purpose AI models, which is enforced by the Commission and more specifically the AI office. So this is where I work. I'm a workstream lead in the unit on AI safety, which is the unit A3. And our core objective is really to implement and enforce the rules for general purpose AI models, particularly the most advanced models in the language of the AIinEurope. Those are the models with systemic risk. And for those models, the companies that develop them need to assess and then mitigate the risks to make sure that the models are safe for all of us. Implementation here means providing additional guidance on the AIinEurope, which in some places is quite high level. And then enforcement just means making sure that the companies follow the rules and taking appropriate action if they don't. And I think this relates to the international aspect, which we're discussing today, in two ways. One is that there's just a lot of work to do in AI safety, both on the technical side, but also on the governance side. And we do not want to duplicate the work, and so we're very happy to collaborate with our international partners on this. And the other thing is what Juha already mentioned, that many of these risks do not stop at national borders, and so we need a global approach to the governance of AI, and we think the AIinEurope can play an important role here, and so we're excited to help shape those conversations as well.
Many thanks, Simon. If we take another angle now with the AI for the public good, Miguel, could you introduce your work at the AI office and help us understand a bit better this concept of AI for the public good? And yes. I think you have a slide actually to share with our audience.
Indeed, the slide will come up soon. Thank you very much, and welcome to this webinar. AI for public good, we are part of the AI office. It's kind of one of the practical work streams of the AI office. We develop AI models to solve challenges that we have in our society. So it's applying AI for the good benefits of society. We do it in a practical manner. It has another benefit. By developing our own AI-based capacities, we can increase our sovereignty and make sure that we are more independent technologically from other international powers. So what we do is we develop AI-based innovative models. It's open source that can be used by governments. And these models, I will mention later on some examples. We work on health, energy, and crisis management, disaster management. What is the international dimension, the international cooperation dimension of AI for public good? In addition to increasing our internal capacities in the EU to foster our capacities to tackle or to solve these kind of challenges in our societies, we offer these AI models as they are open source to be tailored and to be scaled up in countries in need, in the so-called Global South. This is the second work stream, is international cooperation in AI. We do it in a practical manner. We offer these open AI models. And finally, we are also in contact with some like-minded partners, and it's part also of this cluster of working with other countries as part of international cooperation. We try to set up scientific cooperation with these like-minded partners to train and to develop these AI models, so this way we can increase our capacities, but also we can have a joint effort to offer these models to the international community. So this is in a nutshell what we do in AI for public good.
Many thanks. So this concludes our first part in this webinar. I just remind the audience that you can ask questions directly to our speakers through this QR code that you can see on the screen. So don't hesitate, we are an interactive webinar. So I will now pass to the second part of our webinar on bilateral relations. And we just started to discuss bilateral relations, actually, through your interventions. So let me go back to Juha. Could you give us a clearer picture of our partnerships and how do we engage with our partners?
Thanks. So we have different forms, different kinds of formalized partnerships with a number of countries. So what we call digital partnerships, we have those with Canada, Japan, Korea and Singapore. Then we have trade and technology councils with India and the US. These does not necessarily mean that they are very different, except that Trade and Technology Council also involves trade aspects, which are handled by colleagues in DG Trade. Then we have what are known as digital dialogues. We have those with a number of countries. They are less formalized, maybe less comprehensive partnerships, but those are ongoing, have been ongoing for a while. They are broader than AI, but they always include AI as one of the components. We do this, for example, with Australia, with Brazil, and we have also now, we are increasing the cooperation with some of these countries like Australia and the UK. We have also increased the regional cooperation with, in particular, the Latin American and Caribbean countries, and this is actually set to increase as we go forward. We have different forms of cooperation with these countries depending on the common interest, the shared interest and the mutual benefit, but they cover different aspects. Very often we talk about, of course, regulation and governance, because this is something that we are well known worldwide for, and we exchange best practice, we exchange information, we explain our approach, we explain our AI Act, we also explain the rationale for it, but we also cooperate on research and capacity building with a number of countries. And of course, then these two aspects which are also very important, safety on the one hand and the AI for public good. So colleagues will explain you more about this in detail in their turn.
Many thanks, Juha, for this big picture. Now, if we go back to the AI for public good projects, Miguel, could you explain how the AI office steers these projects? And I think you have another slide actually on this work.
Yes, thank you, Natalie. Now I will give a practical example on what we do on AI for public good. We have a strong expertise on smart cities, the so-called local digital twins as my unit. Historically, we've been working a lot, and now we are applying AI to the topic of cities, urban planning. So the topic of disaster risk management is one of the key areas of a public good. As we have the global warming and we have more and more, unfortunately, natural disasters impacting, for instance, cities, but also other parts of the planet. We work in three work streams. One is preparedness, and we develop tools so that cities can anticipate and improve urban planning. So when a disaster like a flood is hitting the city, they can minimize the impact because they have already taken informed decisions applying AI on how to minimize the impact. The second topic is when the disaster is unfolding, and we have seen this year especially in summer, wildfires affecting many parts of Europe, south of Europe especially. We are developing for these purposes in cooperation with other colleagues in the Commission, like DG Joint Research Center and ECHO, a platform based on AI to monitor in real time the impact of a wildfire in any part of Europe. And this using artificial intelligence, we can predict well how the wildfire is going to evolve in the next 24 hours. And this way we can quantify, using AI models, the number of resources we need to bring in the field to put out a fire based on meteorological weather forecasting conditions and different inputs. So this crisis management, this multi-hazard platform is going to be extended to floods in next year. And it's part of the capacities we are building for the European Civil Protection Mechanism, but we will also offer to other parts of the planet. And in practice, we will have a cooperation, for instance, with Latin America, with Chile and the Caribbean area that also are suffering more and more of fires. And finally, reconstruction. After the disaster has hit, for instance, an urban area, we are also applying AI, developing a tool that can be used by cities to reconstruct, using optimized urban planning and running different simulations, assessing the level of damage, using artificial intelligence, and also using artificial intelligence based on the different reconstruction scenarios, quantifies precisely the cost of this reconstruction, bringing transparency and being capable of monitoring along the reconstruction project if there are deviations. In this way we can minimize fraud. This is a so-called digital twin for reconstruction, and in this case we are doing this in partnership with Ukraine, with cities in Ukraine, and this is a tool that will be presented actually this week in the Rebuild conference in Warsaw. So this is in a nutshell one example on what we do on AI for public good.
Many thanks, Miguel. And I think the conference in Warsaw is on the 14th of November, right?
Yes, 13th and 14th.
And 15th. Okay, very good. Simon, if we turn back to the more technical side of our bilateral relations, how does the AI office cooperate with other countries on safety?
Yeah, I think you had touched on many of the points, so I'll just add a bit of color and specific examples. So the first collaboration I'd mention is with South Korea. So there, it's not that much about the technical aspect. It's really they are developing their basic AI Act, and they're quite interested to learn from our experience with the AI Act and its implementation, and to make sure that we share the lessons that we've learned, and we end up with a harmonized approach. So I think this is like quite exciting, because we did learn a lot along the way of creating this law and now implementing it, and it's great if we can share this with our partners. Then we have Singapore. I think they have been a great partner in the network of AI safety institutes. We'll touch on this later in the multilateral collaborations. But we're also exploring more technical bilateral collaboration, specifically on evaluation of AI models. And then finally, there's the collaboration with the UK AI Security Institute. There we have ongoing technical collaborations on a broad range of topics, ranging from like infrastructure and how to run evaluations to specific discussions on some of the risks that we're both interested in. So I think this covers like a broad range of the things that I mentioned in the intro as well. So on the one hand, making sure that we learn from each other on the technical side as much as possible, and don't repeat any work that others have already done, but then also sort of explaining the European approach to AI governance and regulation, and having others benefit from that.
Many thanks, Simon. So now we have discussed a number of activities that we do with our partner countries, especially safety and the project on AI for public good. And before we move to the multilateral part of our discussion and relations in a moment, let me just check if we have any questions from the audience, and we actually do. We do have quite a few. So I will start with you, Juha. You spoke about the scientific cooperation. Which countries are on the top of the list?
Well, this is of course something where we need to have a relatively advanced common base. So typically those are then countries which have advanced AI, which also have the capacity to develop AI and to discuss the topics as necessary. Actually, at a very sort of concrete level, this takes place in this Horizon framework program for research and innovation. So some of our partner countries are members of Horizon or associate countries, so as we call them, so Canada, Japan, Korea. But we're also discussing then, in addition to this, aspects which we have now taken up, for example, with Japan on potentially cooperation on robotics. Robotics for us is part of AI, certainly. So this is, when we talk about robotics, it's intelligent robotics or embodied AI, if you like. So physically instantiated robotics. Physically instantiated AI. So this is basically how we approach it, and we have plans with other countries as well that I cannot go into at the moment.
Many thanks, Juha. Maybe this is a question for both of you, Miguel and Simon. AI technology developed fast and dynamically. How do you ensure, that open source models stay maintained and on the level of the state of the technology? Simon, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. In the AI safety unit, we don't develop any open source models ourselves. I think in terms of open source, there's the application of the AIinEurope to open source models, where we have carve-outs to not hinder innovation in this area. I think also open source models can play an important role in AI safety research because they just allow for greater transparency and give researchers more access. I think at the same time, particularly when it comes to the most advanced models, there are just risks that get harder to mitigate when you open source your model. And this is also acknowledged by the AIinEurope. So the carve-outs sort of end when the model hits the threshold for systemic risk. So I think in terms of this, the AIinEurope sort of finds a good balance between allowing innovation and allowing researchers to continue to develop open source models while sort of mitigating the largest risks that these models could pose.
Any point to add, Miguel, on the practical
Yes,
side?
I can give two examples. As you have mentioned, we rely a lot on financial instruments like Horizon Europe that per se is promoting innovation. So in the case of AI for public good, we use quite a lot procurement and grant-based projects. We try to bring maturity to research. So what we do in AI for public good is targeting high levels of maturity, SLs very high, up to 8. And this way we go to the market through procurement or grant-based projects, and we try to procure or to get, the state-of-the-art models. For the maintenance and scaling up, in the area of a smart city, for instance, we have a new consortium that is called EDIC, it's European Digital Infrastructure Consortium. So we are supporting community-driven, smart city-driven projects that they can take the models we have developed and they can scale it up and create a kind of marketplace in years to come, bringing industry. So we is one of the examples. In the area of a public good, we are also trying to have partnerships with relevant initiatives like the Global Gateway, D4D, and I will mention later on, that can take over from us and they can scale up and do the maintenance of those models, especially in areas in need, like in Africa.
Many thanks, Miguel. We do have other questions. So now we come back to a more geopolitical question that would be for you, Juha, but maybe also for you, Simon. The safety and security chapter of the Code of Practice for General Purpose AI is popular in the US and China. This is a question from our participants. What actions do you take for international regulatory or enforcement cooperation? You want to start?
So overall, of course, we have a different starting point because we are the ones who have the AI Act. We have hard law on AI. This is not the case at the federal level in the US. Of course, at the state level in the US, there is legislation, something which is perhaps not generally known. And of course, then China has very specific targeted regulation on aspects related to AI. There is as such, no direct cooperation on the regulatory aspects of AI between these with us and those two countries as such. But with the US, of course, we have exchanged over the past years. We have exchanged on governance aspects. We have, of course, also explained our AI Act and its provisions. And of course, then there is the cooperation on the safety aspects, which derives from the provisions on safety in the AI Act.
Yeah, can I add to this? Yeah, I think maybe just to take a step back, because I don't know if everyone here is familiar with the Code of Practice to begin with. This is one of the ways that we facilitate the implementation of the AI Act. So this is a document that outlines how companies can comply with the AI Act. It was written by world-class external experts, received input from more than 1,000 stakeholders, and the role of the AI office was to facilitate this process. And I think the output here really is a really great document, both on the content level, but also through the stakeholder process. It gives it a lot of legitimacy. And as a result, more than 25 companies, including most of the major providers, have signed the code and said that this is the way that they will comply with the AI Act, which we think makes it easier for both us and them, because we sort of speak the same language and agree on a common interpretation. And yeah, this is quite exciting, I think, because there have been voluntary commitments in the past. There are some laws, like you have said, on the state level, for example, in the US, that require transparency. But the Code of Practice, with the backing of the AI Act, is really the most detailed and the most binding commitment that frontier companies have made regarding their safety and security practices. And yeah, I think Europe here really is implementing the pilot for how to regulate frontier AI, and the world is certainly watching. And if we do this well, I think it can serve as a blueprint for other countries. And then maybe just to briefly touch on the enforcement side, in addition to what Juha mentioned, indeed there is it's difficult, or we haven't established this on sort of the governance level, but we are in touch with several companies and talk about the way that they are working towards compliance with the AI Act. And I think this gives us now first feel for how the rules are landing, what the Code of Practice actually means in practice. And I think these learnings will be useful for us, but then also for the international discussions that we have on this topic.
Many thanks. Juha.
Yeah, maybe a couple of things to add. So we have, of course, had exchanges with the Californian legislators. They've been very interested in our AI Act, in our approach in general. Just very recently, there was an AI bill passed in California, adopted, signed by the governor as well. And we have noticed that they've been very keen to talk to us to understand how we go about this and why we do things the way we do. That AI bill actually has similarities with the Code of Practice, which Simon mentioned. So that's an interesting point perhaps to mention as well. And then, of course, taking it to a broader field, we have had exchanges, of course, with Korea, which has an AI basic law. So they have been very keen to discuss with us. Other countries as well, like Brazil, they have an AI bill in the pipeline, which has similarities, a lot of similarities with our AI Act. And of course, countries which are considering whether they should regulate AI, Australia, for example, they've been very keen to follow our progress and to discuss different aspects and different factors to take into consideration when they are preparing for their decision.
Thanks a lot. Before we go back to the Code of Practice, we have an extra questions on this for you, Simon. There is a question from a participant asking, do we have any work in relation with trade agreements or international treaties? Or is it purely soft law, non-legal multilateral cooperation? So this trade agreements question is coming back quite a lot.
So this does crop up in some contexts in our discussions, for example, with Canada, in particular because we have a trade agreement with Canada. So whether to include perhaps some aspects of AI into these discussions in this context as well. Those discussions are ongoing, so there is no conclusion at the moment. And of course, it also comes back in some ways because standardization is an important part of our of the implementation of the AI Act, and this can then, of course, have consequences from the trade perspective.
Thanks. A lot of participation from our viewers, so I continue with their question. Simon, the safety and security chapter of the Code of Practice is sorry, I need to go back to the right question. Yeah, AI security is often a bit forgotten compared to AI safety in conversations and AI calls. No, this question is, I mean, it's not the best actually, I have to say, because it's, so let me go back to the question that I had on the Code of Practice. Mm-hmm. What were the reactions from our partners of the Code of Practice? And especially in the network of the safety institutes.
Yeah, I think like I said, the Code of Practice was a long process. It took a year, so there were multiple draft versions, and every time we solicited feedback from many different stakeholders, including countries, but also civil service organizations, and academics and companies. I think the most there were some debates in the final stages of the process because this was a very important document, and some people were thinking it was going too far and demanding too much, and others were saying it's not going far enough. I think what we've seen since the publication is that it has landed pretty well. So I think both companies are signing onto it, but also also organizations concerned with AI safety are broadly favorable and think it does a good job of mitigating the risks from AI. I think, we'll talk more about the network later. I think our main focus, as you'll see, is on technical collaborations, and so we have not discussed the Code of Practice in particular in a lot of detail.
Thank you, Simon. We do have a lot of questions on the upcoming omnibus. So Juha, could you tell us a bit how the proposals that we will see, and it's not only about AI Act, obviously, we will see interact with our work at international level? Is there any angle that you can take here?
Well, I think it's important to understand that we are not going to repeal the AI Act, or we're not going to take back what we have proposed. We're going to simplify the compliance with our regulation. From the international perspective, there's not really a kind of direct impact as such, because of course this concerns the regulation that we have, the law that we have for our internal market. So in that sense, the international aspect is not really particularly strong there. Of course, we do this from our purposes, for our own reasons. So this is not triggered off by our international discussions either. So it's not international pressure or international influence that has led us to this kind of plan, and this is just the priority of the Commission, and we are following that.
So many thanks to all for this part on the bilateral relations. Now we will enter in our third and final part of our webinar to discuss multilateral relations and how we interact with and within the organization at international level. Juha, let me start again with you, because you are here our expert to map the landscape of multilateral cooperation. Could you do that for us?
Yes. Well, the international AI governance or AI initiative landscape has got quite crowded, as I tend to say, over the past few years. So there are more and more initiatives. It looks a bit like every organization which kind of feels they need to either be involved, or some cases maybe even just raise their profile. They want to be involved in the international AI governance aspects. it's quite a fragmented landscape, and in that sense, it is a complex terrain to work in. Multilaterally, of course, many people think of organizations like the United Nations. We are, of course, involved. There have been 2 AI-related resolutions in the United Nations. There's a third one in the pipeline. There was also the Global Digital Compact, which was adopted in September last year, and that has a chapter on AI. So we've been heavily involved in that. Of course, the role of the AI office here is a bit different because the European Union is not a member of the United Nations. So what we do is we aim to coordinate the positions of the member states in this regard. So we ensure that via our delegations, in the case of the resolutions, the past 2 resolutions, and also the Global Digital Compact, the delegation, EU delegation New York, was doing the coordination based on the elements and the input that they then got from us in the process. So this is how it works in the UN context. But then we are directly involved in many of the key forums, in all the key forums where AI is discussed, either from the governance aspects or other kind of coordination, cooperation aspects. So G7, G20, the OECD has a number of working groups on AI. We are involved in all of those. And then there is the Global Partnership on AI, which now is an initiative which started in 2020. So it's been going on for 5 years. It was based on initially on a declaration made by France and Canada, and it was then developed. The EU is a founding member of that initiative. It formed an integrated partnership with the OECD just last year, and we are involved directly as a fully fledged member in all these discussions. So this is something that we take quite seriously. In G7, of course, we had the Code of Conduct and the guiding principles for developers of advanced AI, which were negotiated 2 years ago. A very labor-intensive process, but a very fruitful process, which has had then, of course, repercussions later in the positive sense. And of course, then there is the cooperation in the context of the network of AI safety and security institutes, which is something that Simon will be able to say much more about.
Yeah. Maybe we can bring up the small visual we have for this. Just briefly, so this network of AI safety and security institutes, first of all, naming is hard. Names of some of the members have changed in the past. So it's easiest if you stick to International Network of ACES. The S can be safety or security. It's a group of 10 national AI offices and really intended to facilitate international cooperation on AI safety and security. It was inaugurated in November 2024 in San Francisco, and since then the network has met in Paris along the AI Action Summit there, and in Vancouver a couple of months ago. But also a lot of the technical work happens between these meetings on a technical level. So I think right now the focus is really on joint research and testing and developing of best practices. For this, the backbone are these joint testing exercises where the network members work together and exchange best practices, but also just like methodology and evaluate AI models jointly.
Thank you. Before we go back to the network of the AI Safety Institutes, I just want to ask you, Juha, how do you see our narrative on AI and particularly on AI safety evolving internationally?
So I think there are a number of points that could be made here, but I think one important process here was the G7 Hiroshima AI process. And so as I already mentioned, 2 years ago, the Code of Conduct and guiding principles for developers of advanced AI were drafted in this G7 context, and that has continued. Japan in particular has been very active, and we've been involved, of course, in keeping this alive, if you like. So there is now this Hiroshima Friends Group, which takes this discussion also to a broader audience. So it involves countries beyond those that are members of G7. And this is something that we see to develop. And this sort of relates to the bigger picture, which is also that there's now more involvement of more countries around the world overall in this AI discussion. Part of this is, of course, due to these AI summits, which started in 2023. The first one was organized in the UK at Bletchley Park. That was just an AI safety summit. And then the second summit was held in Seoul in May 24. And now then the third one in Paris, the AI Action Summit, which was held in February this year. And this has, of course, brought the conversation to a bigger audience. More countries have been invited to join. So this is one development. So that's an additional component in this landscape, which has appeared now over the past 2 years. And this is one of the things that we see clearly. And of course, their safety was a key aspect initially, the only aspect, in fact, in the first summit. Now it's been taken broader. Safety remains one of the aspects still in these summits.
Very good. If we go back to the Safety Institute network of the AI Safety Institutes, how does this work at international level differ or complement the work done by the network?
Yeah, like I said, I think the network is, especially now, I think it has evolved a bit over the past year, focused on technical work and on capacity building. I think it's quite exciting that government organizations work together on a really hands-on technical level. I think this does not happen so often. So maybe just to make it a bit more concrete, we had 3 joint testing exercises to build capacity and increase cooperation. And to give an example of what that's like, so in the 3rd joint testing exercise, we looked at evaluating the cyber risks from AI. So there the setup is that you provide a cybersecurity challenge to an AI model, you provide some tools that it can use to solve it just like a human would solve it. And our contribution from the AI office here was to adjust which tools the model has access to and see how it impacts the results. And other member states or other members of the network varied other parameters. And so then overall, this gave us a chance to sort of explore how important the setup is and therefore how trustworthy the results of such evaluations are. And I think we did not produce groundbreaking results, but I still think just the fact that 10 government organizations worked together on a technical level and produced like a pretty significant report and results is pretty exciting. And the other angle is that the trajectory is also very exciting. I think for us personally, our unit was started in September 2024, and we had no capacity to do any technical work then. And then over the course of the 3 joint testing exercises, we set up our internal infrastructure to run various evaluations on a whole range of models, and are now able to really contribute to these pretty sophisticated evaluations of AI models. And I think that's pretty exciting, and we've seen similar developments with other members of the network. And so I think the network as a whole will be able to do more and more going forward. And I think right now the idea is that we will continue to do technical work and to learn from each other and collaborate on this as a foundation, but also start working more on producing output on methodology and on best practices to sort of share our view with the ecosystem. And I think this is just a way for the network to contribute to the AI safety space more broadly. And then, of course, also with this expertise in all the governments, we can contribute to good policy there. And so I think this is another way that the network supports some of the other international engagements.
Many thanks, Simon. And we can find all the reports on the AI Office website,
Yes,
and after the different discussions of the network. Miguel, if we broaden the scope of the project we are developing with our partner countries, could you give us, and the international organizations, of course, could you give us a example of project that we are developing with partner countries for the benefit of the Global South?
Yes, thank you, Natalie, for the question. First of all, something that we have done is capacity building through different partnership initiatives launched by the Commission, like Smart Africa. We have participated in some workshops with African partners, governments, local innovation hubs, to explain exactly how we approach AI in a sound manner in the EU. Anchoring our values, data protection, privacy, semantic interoperability, openness, transparency. It's been quite successful, and it's something that it will happen, it will continue to happen. And in parallel, what we do, we have launched recently a new initiative that is called Generative AI for Africa. It's an open call, and here the goal is to bring EU technical companies with strong expertise on generative AI Africa, in partnership with local innovation hubs in Africa, so these technologies from the EU can be tailored and adapted in conjunction with local partners in Africa, and it can be later on scale up for the purposes of the African societies. And this initiative, Generative AI for Africa, is focusing on 4 key areas. One is digital skills, that is very much needed. We need to bring these digital skills in Africa, in the continent, so they can start developing and applying AI for their own benefit. Agriculture optimization, that is a key topic, especially with the scarce resources they have in Africa, like water, irrigation, healthcare. And we are strongly working on this topic in AI for public good and cancer diagnosis using AI and images. And finally, urban planning, to optimize urban planning to face also challenges that they have in Africa with the global warming and different let's say, side effects because of the global warming. This is more or less in a nutshell what we do in this topic.
Many thanks. And if we mention the UN, it seems to be the most active international organization on AI, if I'm correct. Juha, this is a question for you. What are the dynamics at the UN level on artificial intelligence? And what are the sensitive points and the EU positions or objective there?
Dynamics, I think the short answer is complex. So it is something which obviously the UN is a forum which brings together 190 odd countries, obviously with very diverse interests and priorities. And I think what we see in the UN context is very much the opportunity that a lot of the developing world sees in the UN as getting involved in AI governance discussions, in getting involved in AI in general, and having a say in it. What makes it very complex is, of course, then that we have some countries there which also try to take advantage of this and advance their own interests. So we see it often that countries which are far from us in terms of like-mindedness, they are very often active there. They also want to find allies there and move things in a direction which is not necessarily in our interest. One sort of question in particular which often comes here is the involvement of stakeholders, whether we are setting up multi-stakeholder processes or whether we are talking about intergovernmental negotiations. And there the European Union member states and of course also like-minded countries, we have often emphasized the need to have a multi-stakeholder approach because this is in our view very important in this context. Whereas then some countries like China, Russia, they tend to favor intergovernmental processes and negotiations potentially leading even to binding instruments, which could be then problematic for us. And here, of course, the question of values drops up, because if countries which advocate these processes don't share our values, and they promote goals which are not in line with our values and with our goals, this gets then quite complicated. I mentioned at the beginning that one of the goals is to avoid any statements or any resolutions or conclusions which conflict with our AI strategy, and in particular with the AI Act. And this is one big part of that work there. So it is something where we spend a lot of time at times to make sure that our approach and our values are reflected and are properly taken into account. The outcome of the Global Digital Compact process was a good example of this, where some people now feel that it didn't go far enough in some respects. On the other hand, it was maybe not an ideal outcome from our perspective either, but it is a very acceptable compromise in many ways. It has to be a compromise. It always ends up in this way, of course, in the UN context. So the kind of common denominator we found in those discussions, which was acceptable to all. What we do find occasionally, however, is that then there may be efforts later on to introduce some of the demands through the back door in other instruments, which may not have ended up in some kind of a text that was concluded. So in many ways, it's a very, very complex forum. One of the things that is kind of discussed a lot these days is support to capacity building outside the developed world. And this is a discussion which is quite complex, of course, because it does not easily lend itself to the UN context. In the UN, there is the Office of Digital and Emerging Technologies, which has quite a big role in these discussions, or it's not actually directly involved, but it is preparing some of these discussions and steering it. So this is one of the questions there. Of course, then there have been attempts also to have some provisions or statements in those, particularly the Global Digital Compact, which were unacceptable from our perspective, like some kind of a global fund, which would have then obligatory contributions. It does get quite difficult at times to achieve an agreement on some of the things. One of the problems, of course, also is that in the UN context, we have a number of agencies which are quite active in the area of AI. So UNESCO in particular, but also the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. So there is also some internal rivalry in the UN context about who deals with AI and to what extent they can deal with AI. And of course, one of the problems in the UN context is funding, because for a number of reasons, the funding of the United Nations is not on a very solid basis. There is not money going around that can be invested in a number of things. And this is something that then becomes a problem when there are demands for setting up procedures and doing things which are necessary. So in the Global Digital Compact, for example, there are two specific deliverables, if you like, which lead to concrete action. One is the scientific panel, independent scientific panel on AI. There, one of the key discussions was the independence of that panel. So we emphasized very much, together with our like-minded countries in the UN, that scientific panel, which is supposed to deliver the state of science yearly, that it should remain independent, whereas many countries, many UN members wanted to have government appointees on that panel, which in our view would defeat the purpose and would not actually lead to a panel with any relevance. The other part is, of course, then the global dialogue on AI governance, which will now first convene in July in the context of the AI for Good conference organized by the International Telecommunications Union. So that is then a forum where we discuss different aspects of AI. There are different strands and so on. That conference, the name is a bit misleading. It covers AI in all its aspects. It's not just about AI for good in the sense we are talking about it here today. But that's quite a sort of natural context for that discussion. And there, of course, the stakeholders now have a say. This was one of the things we wanted to keep the multi-stakeholder aspect involved in this conversation. Some UN members wanted to keep this as an intergovernmental exchange, which in our view would not be very useful and helpful. So those are some of the aspects in the UN context which are problematic. Things are moving forward, but it is a complex and difficult forum to deal with from everyone's perspective, I think, just simply because of the divergent views there and the complexity of it, the lack of funding for setting up new things. And of course, what we have emphasized also, I mentioned already that the landscape is quite crowded, and we don't want to have new structures set up because there are enough existing structures also in the UN context which could take over some of the things that are discussed there.
Many thanks, Juha. Before we go back to AI for Good that you mentioned just now, I have to ask you this question from a participant because it's a very perfect follow-up to this point that you've just made. Does the EU have enough staff to for all these activities and these international activities? What is your take on this?
I think the way we've approached international cooperation has been to gradually increase the scope of it, and that has been also due to the resource situation. So we are relatively a small group, and of course to enhance this, this means more work, and there are times when of course our resources are pushed to the limit because of this, and of course given the complexity and given the increasing number of activities, it is getting more and more challenging, obviously. I've been doing this job for just over 4 years, and in this time alone, the number of activities has increased very significantly. It looks very different from what it looked in 2021.
Thank you. So in this context, Miguel, in this international context and our relation with our partners, how do we ensure concretely that the EU countries actually join forces to ensure maximum impact with our project, AI for Good project in this case? And how do we create long-term effective impact?
It's a complex topic, I have to say. First of all, in the topic of AI for public good, or let's say international cooperation on AI development, some member states are very advanced. They started earlier than us, than the AI office. And I will just mention the case of Italy with the MATEI plan and the AI Hub for Sustainable Development that we are supporting. We are sitting in the executive steering board. It's a comprehensive plan targeting 14 countries in Africa to support capacity building through the government's innovation hubs to deploy and to set up data computing centers, but also working on different areas, developing AI models, training AI models. The Germans also, they are working on this topic, and France, it was launched this year, actually on the 10th of February in the AI Action Summit. They have the current AI, that is also a comprehensive program to support not only Africa, is in general the Global South, bringing financial resources and different topics. So we have already players in Europe, basically Germany, France, and Italy, very active based on this. We have also the Canadians, very, very active. So the first thing we do as Commission, we are among peers, obviously, but we have a fundamental role of coordinating what the member states are doing, giving visibility, what they do in international fora. And this is what we do, for instance, in the G7. Under the Canadian presidency, there is this AI for Everyone project to try to bring synergies and to create a kind of common political narrative on what the G7 is doing to support the Global South. So we coordinate these efforts and we give visibility to what the member states do. And then on the practical side, inside the EU, the resources are limited. We have, of course, different initiatives working not always in the same areas, but developing synergic projects and initiatives. And our role is we are trying to create a reinforced cooperation on international cooperation on AI through the Digital for Development Hub. It's a forum where the member states, they sit and they exchange best practices. And there is one subgroup on AI, and our intention is to bring this group on AI as a practice forum where we can bring synergies between these different initiatives, among them ours, AI for Public Good. So together we can have a reinforced cooperation and joint efforts so that we can together scale up what we do and reduce what we do, because sometimes there are some synergies, a bit of overlapping. So this is what, in a nutshell, we are trying to coordinate in this topic, bringing the different member states initiatives and the financial resources to scale up what we do and to reduce as much as possible.
Thank you, Miguel. I have actually two follow-up questions from our participants, so I think it's relevant to mention them here. The first one would be for you, Miguel. In line with the EU International Digital Strategy, what are the plans for AI when it comes to the EU tech business offer?
Yes, this is indeed, this is a relevant part of this international strategy. It's in the making, I have to say. We are working with the colleagues of the international unit in DigiConnect. It goes along the lines of what I said earlier on, is to bring member states, the different initiatives that we have together. We have a lot of strengths together. We have different initiatives, but together we are covering globally many areas, many use cases, many technologies. So this kind of technical office will try to bring synergies and to create like a Team Europe. We have already the concept of Team Europe that is being developed extensively with DigiINPA here in DigiConnect through the Global Gateway. So the idea is to foster this and to have a common capacity that together in the EU we can develop this common strength and support the Global South. And also as part of this international strategy, and you have mentioned, and Simon, we have this role of having these international partnerships. When it concerns to our unit in the international strategy, there is a strong presence of partnerships with like-minded countries like Canada, UK, Japan, and supporting Ukraine, and I mentioned earlier on. So these capacities that we are building in the office should be at the disposal, at the purpose of this international arrangement with like-minded countries and supporting the Global South.
Thank you. Here is a question for the three of you, I think, because we have participants asking about the EU AI priorities for Asia. So if you could go to these priorities from the different perspectives that you have in mind. Maybe we start with you, Juha.
So the priorities with Asia are not necessarily that different from the priorities we have with other partner countries and areas, but certainly with the more developed countries there, we work on aspects like safety, as has already been mentioned. That is quite an important part of it. We also seek to have discussions about potentially aligning our positions in international forums, in international discussions, and there, of course, the like-minded partners in Asia have a big role to play, and that has been going on for some time. Then it depends really on the country we're dealing with. I think I already mentioned Japan and how we, in addition to AI safety, we are also looking into cooperating on other aspects related to research, for example. And then with Korea, then we have a lot of discussion on the governance and regulatory aspects, because they are also regulating AI. Then, of course, we have we are opening discussions with other countries which are then at a different level of development. So for example, Indonesia and Vietnam, we have recently explained our approach. So this is typically a first step. We explain what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. And then starting from that, we see what are then the interests and how we go forward, moving forward from that perspective, and develop the activities in keeping in mind the mutual interest and the mutual benefit. So there is no one right answer in that regard. It's an assessment that we do case by case. And of course, Asia is a big continent with very different levels of development. So we have very advanced economies there: Japan, Korea, Singapore, of course. India is becoming a more and more important partner in the Asian region. There we're also working on skills. So this is an aspect that we are looking at. So India has a lot of talent, a lot of skills. They are quite happy, in fact, to export it. But and on the other hand, we lack some of the skills in Europe, or we have lots of skills, but we may not have necessarily the numbers always to meet the demand for that skill. So we are looking into ways of bringing that together. Very recently we had a discussion in the context of the Trade and Technology Council with India to look at the kinds of activities that we could do together. I can't go into them now because this is in the making, so this is something that we are preparing. But there we see interesting activities in terms of also AI models, maybe, given that India is a country which has a large number of languages, many more than we have in fact in Europe, but still, there are interests from that perspective because a lot of the models are developed on the basis of English, and it's also in our interest to look into ways of developing models for other languages to see the kinds of problems that are related to it and the kinds of obstacles that we might face there.
Thank you. Simon, do you have anything to add on Asia cooperation?
Yeah, so maybe just to be explicit, that Japan and Singapore and Korea are all members of the network of ACES. And in fact, Japan and Singapore have been leading the work on the joint testing exercises. So I think, yeah, we're collaborating a lot with them there, and we really appreciate, it's a lot of work that they're putting into the organization of these processes, and we're really grateful for that. Also earlier this year, Singapore hosted a conference on AI and AI safety that we attended. I think this was really useful in a way that it brought together stakeholders from the US, from Europe, but also from Asia, and we had a good discussion on the science of AI safety and what the research priorities should be. I think it's quite important to build these bridges and make it a global discussion. And then separately from this, the AI Act applies to any company that places a model on the European market, and so this obviously also includes Asian companies, and so we are in conversations there as well.
Thank you. Miguel, anything to add on this Asian chapter?
Yes. Although our focus is primarily Africa and Latin America, to be honest, we haven't explored yet cooperation in countries in need in Asia. It's true that in Asia, as part of the other work strand that is scientific cooperation for co-design or co-training of AI models for AI for public good, we've been in touch with Japan. We have participated in some preliminary dialogues, and we are looking forward to continuing these dialogues. There will be some extra dialogues coming soon with Japan. In the topic of disaster management is one of the topics that I presented in my second slide, and obviously it's very synergic as it's a country that is affected regularly by natural disasters. They are quite innovative, quite advanced, so I think it could pay off together to foster this scientific cooperation and to innovate on AI models that can be used for preparedness, crisis management, and reconstruction, the key areas that we are working on AI for public good. So we are looking forward to fostering this scientific cooperation, for instance, with Japan.
Many thanks, Miguel. I will take other questions from the participants, but first I come back to actually the questions that I had for you, Juha, and it's related to Asia. In the next AI summit will be organized by India after the summit organized in Paris this year. What is your role as an advisor for international aspects on AI and the role of the AI office in the organization of these AI summits, which are big international organizations? And what is our objective?
Thanks. So maybe I should go back to the beginning of the summit. I already mentioned that we had the first one in the UK in November 23, then in Seoul May 24, and Paris February 25. And when this first summit, it was actually meant to be a one-off thing, this AI Safety Summit, but then it turned into a series because other countries showed interest in organizing a similar summit. But there we had a critical role also in Seoul for the same reason, which was that the EU member states did not all get invited to this summit. So we had only 6 member states invited to the Bletchley Park summit in the UK, likewise in Seoul, which are basically the same invitees. So the role of the Commission there was, this predates the AI office, but we were heavily involved, of course, in this. We wanted to make sure that we represent the whole Union, those member states as well, which were not represented. And this, in that particular case, translated very concretely into negotiating the summit statements. Which is quite a difficult process, of course, even with about 30 participants, as it was the case at Bletchley and Seoul. So what we do in that context is that when we represent the Union as a whole, the Commission basically seeks the agreement of the member states in the Council to do these negotiations, and then subsequently, after the text has been negotiated, presents this to the Council for endorsement. So in order for us to endorse the statement on behalf of the Union, we go via the Council to have the authorization for this. This is something we will be doing also with this summit in India, so we will be dealing with the statement and any sort of overall documents that result from it, and we go again through the same procedure that has been defined interinstitutionally for us. And there, of course, we want to make sure that, again, as I mentioned earlier already a couple of times, I think we want to make sure that all our interests are taken into account correctly, and that we don't end up with agreements or statements which conflict with our approach overall. So this is quite an important aspect of it, but there's more to it. So of course, particularly then in Paris, and now at the summit in India, which will be held in February next year, there were also a number of specific topics discussed in working groups. We have there, of course, the interest to be involved in these working groups and to take part in those discussions. In the upcoming summit in India, there are 7 working groups. Simon and Miguel are already involved in that work, and we are involved also in those other working groups, so that we also there can promote our values and our approach. This can be quite labor intensive, but it's at times very interesting work, and we see there, of course, the need to be involved as a major player in the area of AI. Overall, of course, we also want to emphasize that the European Union does not just do regulation, but we do much more. So we do research, innovation, capacity building, deployment. Of course, deployment we are emphasizing quite a lot these days, and the capacity building aspect. And overall, something that we have not stated so far, what we see as a very sort of significant part of our work is some kind of myth busting. So we end up busting the myths about the European approach to AI. explaining that we've actually been funding, supporting research and innovation for a very long time. So it's not something that we've discovered all of a sudden, although the latest announcements relate to that, and we are strengthening our work in that regard. But it's been going on, and it's a natural part of our work, has always been a natural part of our work, and will continue to be so. So it's important also to explain to others that there is much more to AI in the European Union than just regulation. And this is a common misconception, unfortunately, and something that we need to explain and also give concrete examples, some which you have heard today, of course, already, but more generally also to explain the three pillars that we have, which I mentioned at the very beginning, and some of the activities that we do in that regard. So that's kind of the role in this summit. We don't know exactly yet how the summit in India will pan out in terms of how big the participation will be. We expect, however, of course, a lot of countries to be involved. The summit in Paris had over 90, I think close to 100 of countries involved. I would imagine that the Indian summit will be even bigger. We don't have the numbers yet. We don't know who has been invited. Which countries will be invited, but in any case it's likely to be, also because of India's position, we can imagine that most of the developing world will probably be invited. Paris already was a very significant step forward in this regard. All the member states were invited, but in addition to that, very big parts of the developing world were also involved, and this is set to continue given the priorities that India has overall. So it's a multitude of things we do, some very practical, concrete, even procedural things like the statements, but of course the content is there, what matters, and we may need to make sure that in the AI office that we have the right elements there and that we keep the undesirable elements out of it, and then of course the sort of work in the working groups and on the sort of more technical aspects maybe of AI.
Thank you very much, Juha. Now that we have a few minutes for two extra questions from our participants, I will go back to a more technical question, Simon, for you, because we have a participant asking, how are open source models that could pose systemic risk dealt with at international level? So basically, it's coming back to the code of practice and the guidelines that the Commission has issued on the general purpose AI and how it relates to the AI Act. But could you give us a bit of idea how is it dealt at international level?
Yeah. So again, the tool that we have is indeed the AI Act, and as I said, it has some carve-outs for open source models that are not among the most advanced to not hinder the development and facilitate innovation in that regard. But then when a model crosses, for example, the compute threshold, if it's trained on more than 10 to the 25 flop, to be technical here, then it's presumed to have high impact capabilities and have systemic risk. And in that case, the same obligations would apply to the company developing this model. And then in terms of, so that means they need to assess the risks. And of course, if you deploy a model open source, then the risk landscape changes because you give up some control. Downstream actors can modify it more freely. It's essentially impossible to monitor how the model is used in practice. And so I think there is a lot of research that still needs to be done on open source models to see how really advanced open source models can be deployed safely and responsibly. I think so far they are a little behind the frontier, and so it's great to keep innovating on them. As I said before, it helps with safety research as well as with adoption. So this is good, but I think we need to keep a close eye on this. Also, I think there's still some open questions with respect to open source that we are working through within the scope of the guidelines that you mentioned.
Many thanks. Miguel, anything to add on this?
No, I think Simon described it very well. It's one of the things we are scrutinizing. The challenge indeed is the local deployment and the transfer of these open source technologies to third parties. That's why we are trying to do it in an orderly manner, contacting innovation hubs and transferring these technologies, but also best practices. And we need to indeed to foster the security aspects of these open source technologies when we transfer to the global south. Probably is one of the challenges we will be facing soon. We are still in the development phase. We haven't yet reached this rollout, the local deployment. But that's why we are working with member states and the colleagues of A3 to make sure that we address well all the safety and security aspects.
Thank you, Miguel. Now, the last questions from the participants, and then we will conclude our webinar. It's for you, Juha. We're coming back to the UN role. And as the UN is the largest international organization, and it's more difficult to reach consensus in there, the participant is asking, would it not be better to start cooperating in other international organizations?
Well, we do that. So we are involved in all those contexts where AI is discussed and AI governance is discussed. So in that regard, that activity has actually predates the activity in the UN, because the UN really only started acting on AI about 2 years ago in any serious way as a whole organization in terms of resolutions, etc. Of course, individual parts of the UN system, so UNESCO in particular, they had their AI recommendation adopted in November 21, if I remember correctly, and they were very active. But that's of course the activity of that particular agency, and they have built on that recommendation then further activities. But the UN context, of course, it's not in our control whether AI is discussed there or not, and of course we need to be involved there to safeguard our interests and to promote our values and our approach. It's important, and we cannot avoid it, of course, and we should not avoid it, because it's as I mentioned, also a forum where then many countries which are maybe not involved in the other forums where they can also then be involved and have to be part of this discussion. So yes, I mean, there are other organizations, other forums where AI is discussed. We are involved, and we will continue to be involved and also become, involved in those discussions, maybe in other forums where this might take place going forward. So in that regard, of course, one of the forums which I did not mention yet is the Council of Europe, and we have been, of course, involved in those discussions as well in the past, and continue to be involved in those discussions. That has not been not necessarily so easy either. So in many ways, the more participants you have in a given conversation, the more complex it tends to get, which doesn't mean that those discussions shouldn't be conducted.
Many thanks. So we have arrived at the end of our webinar. I would like to thank very much our speakers and the audience for its active participation with the questions that were really relevant. Today's discussion has informed us about the AI Office activities at international level, both bilaterally and multilaterally, with a ranging of activities from safety to project, from partnership to cooperation with international organizations. Thanks a lot. If you want to know more about digital strategy at international level, you will see the program of the CNECT University appearing on your screen at the end of this program, this webinar. And if you want to learn more about the AI Office activities, just follow us on our website and on our social media, where we try to really be active and publishing as much as possible information and updates. This is it for us now, and thanks a lot for your attention, and see you soon.